Lokati here. Today we are looking at our one div budget witch as part of our, one div T17 mappers series we got going on here. So we're going to be running a Firestorm of Pelting and a Cast When Stunned, Detonate Dead, Wave of Conviction, and Flame Surge combination. So most of our AoE clear is going to be handled with Cast When Stunned, and then most of our single target clear is going to be handled with Firestorm of Pelting. Now I'm aware that Firestorm of Pelting is not a cheap jewel, but we don't consider jewels as part of our budget cost. If you want to run Firestorm of Pelting, all you need to do is go and run Uber Lab until you get an altar that lets you make a Firestorm of Pelting. If you want to run regular Firestorm, you're welcome to. It just straight up does less damage. But we're going to be doing this on an Abomination map, and we're going to be apparently selling this item to this guy right here real quick. Doop doop. This motherfucker right here. Block him. Alright, back to this. Oh, I don't feel like cutting that out, so we're just going to start over again. He sold horse helmet for $60.90. Alright, Lokati here. Today we are going to be looking at our Witch Elementalist. This is part of our 1 div T17 mapper series. So the total cost of the gear that we have on this character is about 1 divine, and then we're running an Abomination map. We are a Firestorm of Pelting self-cast, and then a Detonate Dead Wave of Conviction Flame Surge cast when stunned. So we're going to rely on Cast When Stunned to do most of our clearing for us, and Firestorm of Pelting to do most of our bossing for us. The Firestorm of Pelting Jewel is a little bit on the pricey side, so if you want to run this, you need to run Uber Labs to get one farmed up, or you need to buy a low level one and level it up. But we don't include skill gems in our base cost, it's just for the equipment on the character here. Now the Abomination map we're going to run has extra projectiles, extra area of effect, so Chevron boss is going to be nasty. Extra fizz damage is cold is going to be nasty, and then monsters have elemental resistances, which means we'll do less damage, they'll do more damage, and we don't get any buffs. So we don't use any buffs anyway, that's fine. So, Beyond Breach, whatever. Send it. Send it. Now, as I said, Cast When Stunned is going to be the majority of our clear for us here. You'll still cast Firestorm, especially since you want to get stunned while casting Firestorm. We do 25% more spell damage if we get stunned while we are casting a spell. So make sure you're still casting it, even if you're getting stunned during it, because that will just increase the damage that you do to everything else. And as you can see, our clear is pretty solid, and we don't really have to do much to get the map cleared out. And so even on a T17, you can just kind of waltz through and kill most of the stuff here. Tankier rares are going to take a little bit longer to kill, but we have more than enough DPS for that. All of our damage is hit-based, and the majority of our damage is fire-based, so we do have leech coming in off of our gloves. So make sure that you do keep that leech on your character. In addition to that, we have recovery through recovery when we're stunned, recovery when we're hit, and regeneration through stuns and regeneration through our flasks. In addition to that, we have 80% chance to block and 5% of our life recovered on block. So we have a tremendous amount of layers to help keep our character healthy and alive. We are using Petrified Blood solely so that we can utilize Pain Attunement and get 30% extra spell damage on low life. If you're having some issues getting the tank ability of the character together, you can drop the Petrified Blood and drop the Pain Attunement and use those nodes to just get more life. You'll kill things a little bit slower, but you will have much more survivability with just a larger health pool, because a lot of your recovery is based on you being able to survive a single hit. So if you can't survive a single hit, then it doesn't matter what your recovery looks like. If you are leveling the character, these Beyond Breach maps are phenomenal for leveling, especially if you run the right scarabs, and this character with the Detonate Dead, Cast when Stunned, is just going to absolutely chew through all of these big breaches. We are using Detonate Dead because it is an easy way to do damage without needing a tremendous amount of scaling when you're talking about killing a bunch of medium health targets. And here is our bossing. We always come and kill Dodri first because I don't like dealing with the monoliths while the other bosses are empowered. And as you can see, our single target damage is very strong for the character. We are using Firestorm of Pelting as our main single target source of damage, so just spam cast it on whatever target that you want to hit. The Intensify lowers the area of effect and allows the target to shotgun more on a single target. So make sure you're not running a lot of increased area of effect nodes. We do want that area of effect to be smaller. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Abomination bosses, when we kill Dodri, she will resummon as a ghost, and the ghost has new abilities and they all hit harder. But Dodri is the weakest of the three bosses, so we do like to kill her first. That also gives us the opportunity to kill off the monoliths before the final boss spawns, or before we kill a secondary boss that makes it even harder when they're ghosted. Now, I will typically always come over and kill the red monolith first, because the red monolith makes you take extra damage, and some of these abilities can shotgun and do a pretty ridiculous amount of damage. And degens are something this character does not do very well, so we are going to be avoiding the degens. And usually when you kill one of these bosses, the other two heal back up to full, and Chevron did not heal back up to full, so I really don't want to kill her next while we have 3 monoliths up. So I'm going to try to not hit her with my Firestorm of Pelting. Of course, she's going to want to stand near the target that I'm hitting. Try to get her away from that red monolith over there. As you can see, those extra projectiles and extra area effect make her hits shotgun for a lot of damage. We can go back to killing this red monolith from a distance. We don't need to stand by it. Now we are doing less damage right now because the green monolith and the purple monolith both reduce action speed and reduce damage dealt, but I typically still prefer to kill the red one first because it reduces the chance that we get one shot by an overlapping set of attacks or a degen that occurs when we don't have any incoming hits to help generate some recoup. Abomination boss fight is such a fun and engaging fight. That's why these maps are so cheap, because everyone wants to do them, right? That's how the free market economy works. Oh, see? We got stuck in the degen for too long with no incoming hits, so we didn't have any way to recoup. And that's why we want to kill that red monolith first. Now these 1-div builds are far from immortal, so you will die occasionally. But in the map itself, not versus these bosses, you will have very, very good success with them. Of course, now Chevron is sitting on, there we go. And next you can kill purple or green, it doesn't matter which one. They both do a percentage reduction to your attack speed or to your damage. So both of those are going to reduce the total damage output of your character. And we would like to get another monolith dead before Chavron dies to cast when done nonsense. Well, Malagaro, get right under that. Good boy. Unfortunately, these monoliths don't appear to be curseable, although you can inflict elements on them, but that does massively reduce our damage, coupled with a 50% loss of action speed and a 50% loss of damage. Is it 50 or is it 25? 25% less action speed, 25% less damage. Now we do have Flame Dash bound to Culling Strike support, so we should be able to use that periodically to cull targets. Kill that monolith right there. Now, Chevron is probably going to die before we get this monolith dead. That's okay. We'll probably just kill her anyway. Now here is where it gets nasty, because she does this attack, and I don't know if we can survive that attack, and it is a screen-wide explosion. You probably just don't want to be hit by that. And it's really obvious when it's incoming. Like this thing, it's 3 projectiles, but it's really not that bad. That thing right there, each one of those projectiles explodes. And she fires 3 additional projectiles, which means instead of 24 coming out, it's 100 of them coming out. So not particularly fun. I would just kill Malagaro. Now they are hits, and so generally we're not afraid of hit attacks, but from experience, that thing is just nasty. But with all the monoliths down, we can kill Malagaro relatively quickly. Well, Culling Strike him, and then kill the Nightmare. Now this fight is very simple, just don't stand in puddles. That's it, really. I mean, everything else this boss does, we can easily tank. And he did. No problem. T17, witch done. Now we'll take a look at the POB here. I'm going to go over the tree first. The tree is a little different probably than most of the witches you've seen, and that is because it is very important we hit all of these life masteries. We need as much life as we possibly can so that we can stay tanky, and that is how we're going to do it. We also need to go for blood magic because we are a blood magic build, and because we're using shields, we're going to be taking shield mastery, block mastery here, and block mastery up here. We're also taking a couple of armor masteries here for resistances and reduced critical strike damage. And we're taking increased elemental resistances here, here, and here. Now, for offenses, we are taking caster mastery here, which deals 25% more spell damage. If you've been stunned while casting recently, we get stunned all the time because we are running Immutable Force and Blood Notch. And so this is basically just 25% more spell damage. And then we're always low life, so 30% more spell damage from Pain Attunement here. We also have Iron Will, which allows our strength damage bonus to apply to spells. And then finally, we do carry Reservation Mastery only for the life Reservation Mastery so that we can run 2 auras and still maintain a higher life pool on our character over here. And for recovery, we have Divine Shield, which recovers Energy Shield for physical damage prevented. This is a tremendously powerful node for any amount of Energy Shield on your character. So make sure you're taking this if you're ever on this side of the tree and you have armor and you have some Energy Shield. We're also taking Trial of the Faith, which is regenerating life over 1 second if we've been stunned, and we have been stunned all of the time. So that's pretty much how we're going to build out the character. There's not many options here. If you're not level 92 yet and you want to play the character, you'll probably clip off this part of the tree right here, because this is just additional life and additional damage. And then any lower than that in level, you're probably not going to feel very comfortable in the character. But the next thing to clip would be Pain Attunement right up here, and then pulling off small life nodes like these 4 life nodes right over here. The rest of the tree is pretty much mandatory on the build. As far as skills go, we are running Flammability, Cast when stunned, to Flame Surge and Punishment. We are running Tempest Shield with Eternal Blessing on Termination. We're running Petrified Blood with Flame Dash and Culling Strike. And then our Cast when stunned Wave of Conviction with Immolate and Detonating Dead. Now, Immolate is a required node here unless you have fire damage to spells here. We need to make sure that Wave of Conviction is primarily doing fire damage so that we don't do cold or lightning exposure. And Immolate is what allows us to crank up the fire damage on Wave of Conviction so that we are only exposing with fire. Our main link is Firestorm of Pelting, and it's bound to Spell Echo, Intensify, and Fire Penetration. I'm using an Awakened Fire Penetration because I didn't have a 2020 regular Fire Penetration, but they are both like 34, 35%. There's no difference between them, between a level 1 Awakened and a level 2020. Level 2020 is 20%, or is 35%, 34%, and then Awakened is 35%. No big difference there. Now, as far as items go, we are running an Opal Scepter with just good stuff on it. To find one of these, all you do is click Trade for Items. You adjust this to pull EH out of the search. It'll have EH in there by default. and then you click Find Best. Execute the search. Grab one of these items. Easiest thing in the world to find. You need to come in here and set your budget. Like I set like a 20 chaos budget on this scepter, but I think the scepter that I bought was 5 chaos. And then you're going to sort by sum. And there you go. There's a 12 chaos-ish scepter right there. That is very good. There's one for 20 chaos. There's one for 10 chaos. To give you an example of what this looks like on the character. So if you equipped this one instead of the one I had, we would copy this one in here. We would not run fire damage over time multiplier. We would run a cheap, tier 2 or tier 1 spell damage runesmith on here. And on the suffix of this, does it have cast speed already? Does not have cast speed already. We would run cast speed on the suffix of this. You can even do a cheap one here. Doesn't matter. Add it to the build, and our DPS goes up by a large margin. So the current scepter we're using is not good in particular. It's just was a cheap one that we picked up. You can definitely pick up better scepters than this. For our shield, you want to get a Shaper shield and alt slam it until you have 5% life on block, and then benchcraft on chance to block if you didn't roll chance to block. For our helm, you want to buy just any immolate plus concentrated effect helm on the market. They're usually 5 to 15 chaos a piece. No one's using them because these are bad rolls when they were trying to make a good helmet. For our body armor, we are running Kaom's Heart. This one was a corrupted one with 5% reduced chaos damage taken. I picked it up for like 10 chaos. Definitely always look for cheap corrupted uniques whenever you have an opportunity to, because a lot of these other rolls people don't want and they get rid of them very quickly, but they're actually useful for different builds. For our gloves, we're just running life and resistance gloves. Just get some life and resistance gloves. If it's already got dex on there, fantastic. If you need dex, benchcraft dex on there. Windscreen boots are like 5 chaos usually. We have an amulet that you'll search for the exact same ways you search for your scepter. Just get a good amulet. I actually bought a 10 chaos fractured increased cast speed amulet and hit it with 2 or 3 life reforges until I got a decent life roll on the harvest, and then benchcrafted on. Now we actually changed this benchcraft later, and instead of running the AoE, which reduces our overlap, we just ran a cheap damage while leeching on it. That's probably a better choice. Cleric Devastation in our left ring slot to cover enemies with ash when we ignite them. We ignite things all the time. They're always covered in ash. Valyrian Moonstone Ring on our right ring slot. Make sure you get one with good fire res. They're cheap enough. And same thing, get one with a corruption that's useful. I was using a 38 fire res ring, but then I found this one with 30 fire res and 14 all res, which was phenomenal for like 10 chaos. And then our belt, just a life belt with resistances on it. If you can get one with armor on it too, that's also very, very good. I'm running a topaz flask. The only reason is because I searched for a flask with charges and regenerate life per second, and that thing was 1 chaos. You can use any flask you want. Diamond flask doesn't really do much for the build. Just what I had equipped. Maybe it has like 98% uptime on overload without a diamond flask and 99% uptime with a diamond flask. You can run any flask you want to right here. A granite flask is very solid and necessary. A jade flask is solid and necessary. Get an evasion and an armor roll on something. And then get an amethyst flask to help with chaos damage. Increased block and stun recovery on one of your flasks is also very useful, because we are running a dirt cheap blood notch and a dirt cheap immutable force, and they're just not that good. But they are good for the build. They're just not as good as they could be if you spent money on them. I think I spent like 10 chaos on this and 5 chaos on this. And then just get some jewels that have like attributes and some damage and some max life. It doesn't matter. It's something useful on them. Again, these are very, very cheap to get a hold of. All right, that is our 1 div witch. She did surprisingly good as an elementalist. I think we'll be doing necromancer next. So that'll be the next head on the chopping block. If you have any questions, as always, leave a comment down below or come by Twitch. A lot of these things are easier to explain in person, and I'm super happy to help out anytime I can. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.